On a humid July night in 2014, the deafening roar of 200 million expectant Brazilians faded into deep shadow. Brazil was the host nation and the tournament favorite, standing exactly 90 minutes away from a World Cup final on their home soil. The stage for this impending coronation was the Estadio Mineirazo in Belo Horizonte. The 7-1 scoreline reflects a perfectly executed tactical trap, meaning a total, systemic psychological collapse. When an entire nation expects a championship, the psychological baseline of the host team becomes dangerously fragile long before the opening whistle blows. Brazil entered the semifinal stripped of their two most critical players. Neymar was out with a fractured vertebra. The team's emotional pre-match tribute to him masked a severe void in offensive creativity. They were also missing their captain, Thiago Silva. His suspension cost the team their defensive leader and their primary source of on-field organization. Head coach Luiz Felipe Scolari maintained a rigid double-pivot midfield and relied on outdated man marking, despite missing his key personnel. In the 11th minute, the Brazilian defense left Thomas Müller completely unmarked on a corner kick to volley in the opening goal. The stadium's arrogant confidence evaporated instantly. Germany's fluid, intelligent midfield had begun systematically bypassing Brazil's rigid defensive shape. 12 tense minutes passed before the 23rd minute opened a historic window of absolute destruction. Miroslav Klose scored on a rebound, breaking the all-time World Cup scoring record against the hosts on their own grass. Center-backs David Luiz and Dante were lost in a chaotic system of man-marking. Without Silva to organize the line, the Brazilian defense had no way to track the German runners. Just 179 seconds later, in the 24th minute, Fernandinho was easily dispossessed deep in his own half. Toni Kroos pounced on the turnover and slotted a low shot into the net to make it 3-0. This diagram shows the mismatch in action. Germany's dynamic midfield trio moved with intelligent fluidity, pulling the Brazilian double pivot out of position and creating vast open channels. A rigid tactical system, when hit by sudden setbacks, strips a team of its ability to adapt. 69 seconds later, in the 26th minute, Kroos scored again after the defense failed to clear their lines. This chart illustrates total team collapse. Under extreme pressure, performance drops abruptly as players freeze in collective panic. Lacking shared mental models, tactics vanished, and the Brazilian team entered a state of total psychological paralysis. In the 29th minute, Sami Khedira finished a 14-pass move to make it 5-0, while the Brazilian defenders watched as static spectators. Brazil's psychological submission stood in direct contrast to the tactical aplomb of Joachim Löw. This table shows the statistical reality of the Blitz. Germany scored 4 goals within a 15-minute interval. The 29th minute marked the moment where raw emotion yielded completely to a systemic breakdown. At the final whistle, the score stood at 7-1. Players were in tears, and the stadium was filled with mournful resignation. The media reaction was brutal. Major publications handed out ratings of 0 out of 10 to every single member of the squad. The disaster was quickly labeled the Mineirazo. The name is a callback to the Maracanazo, the 1950 World Cup defeat to Uruguay, now surpassed in scale. Suffering the heaviest defeat of any host nation on home soil shattered Brazil's 94-year-old aura of footballing invincibility. Human instinct looks for malicious intent. Fan forums still trade in conspiracy theories regarding player mutinies and match fixing. There was no deliberate sabotage occurring behind the scenes. The reality was simply a catastrophic failure of both team leadership and collective resolve. The 7-1 was the ultimate failure of rigid tactics meeting extreme psychological fragility. It leaves one question for the history books. How could one of football's greatest nations dismantle itself so completely on its own soil?